Well, right now I'm joined in our Firehouse studio by John Sifton, New York-based private investigator and attorney, executive director of One World Research, which carries out research for law firms and human rights groups. He was formerly at Human Rights Watch as the Asia Division researcher, then senior researcher on terrorism and counterterrorism. He's conducted extensive investigations into the CIA interrogation and detention program. His latest article has been published by the Daily Beast. It's called The Bush Administration Homicides. Welcome to Democracy Now! First, your response to the testimony yesterday.
Well, I think it raised a lot of interesting questions about the effectiveness of torture, but those are the wrong debates to be having right now. The reason I wrote about Bush administration homicides, which is not something I've worked on for a while, a lot of this was uncovered by Human Rights Watch and Human Rights First and the ACLU all the way back in 2003, 2004, 2005. We knew that up to 100 detainees had died in U.S. custody in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we had published this information previously, but I brought it up again because I feel like the debate right now about torture is missing the point. These aggressive techniques were not just limited to the high-value detainee program at the CIA. They spread to the military with disastrous results. They led to the deaths of human beings. And when there's a corpse involved, when there's a dead body involved, you can't just have a debate about policy differences and looking forward or looking back.
Give us examples.
Well, there are detainees as early as 2002 who died in Afghanistan. Some were interrogated by the CIA in closed sites north of Kabul. Others were in the military base at Bagram, beaten to death, literally, by guards who were being instructed by military intelligence officers, to soften detainees up. Later on in Iraq, when the insurgency heated up in August and September of 2003, we saw deaths there, including both CIA interrogation deaths and regular military deaths.
We're talking to John Sifton. We'll come back to him in a minute.
Resistance is something we teach infants. Must leave imprints of the militant in each and every sentence. Our words are relentless because our people are defenseless, so we extend this, hoping we all comprehend this. Resistance is something we teach infants. Must leave imprints of the militant in each and every sentence. Our words are relentless because our people are defenseless, so we extend this, hoping we all comprehend this.
It is written an explicit vision of vocal precision with fiery flavor concocted in grandma's kitchen.
Welfare Poets Resistance here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Our guest is John Sifton, private investigator and attorney based here in New York. His latest piece is in the Daily Beast. It's called The Bush Administration Homicides. Keep going with these examples. And then I want to ask you, well, you're talking murder then, and how should it be prosecuted?
Well, you have, to start, approximately 100 deaths. The Army Criminal Investigation Command has already determined that a large number of those were homicides, which just means that the death wasn't the result of natural causes. Then you have to determine whether those homicides were murder. And the review by Human Rights First, which took place several years ago, showed that in many cases there was good evidence to show that murder had taken place, murder by torture. And yet the military, again and again, has closed these investigations. They've just sort of petered out. But there's a huge amount of documents, tens of thousands of documents, and some of the photographs that are at issue now with the Obama administration releasing photographs are photographs that are evidentiary photographs in those investigations.
Wait, let's talk about that, because this is very significant. It's only been framed as, well, this could incite people. Explain the turnaround, if you can, or what the significance of it is by Obama saying he'd release the photographs because he cared about transparency, and now he's saying he's going to hold on to it. This is after visits, reportedly, from General D'Erno and now the fired General McKiernan.
Well, the photographs are obviously very important, but they're just one side of the coin. There are large amounts of CIA internal documents from the Inspector General's report that the CIA prepared about detainee abuse. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of material that Obama can consider releasing. The photographs obviously are very important. It's good that we're paying attention to them, but the real evidence that shows the way these techniques spread and the involvement of senior Bush administration officials, that's not photographs. Those are memos. Those are CIA cables from black sites to Langley, notes from meetings between Langley and the White House, things like that.
You've requested information.
Well, the thing about the Freedom of Information Act is that you can't get operational cables. You can only get things like memos. But an investigation, a criminal investigation, or a Senate or congressional investigation, you could get some of those cables. And those are very important documents. These are operational cables showing the interrogations, methodologies, what was approved, who knew about them, showing the notes of meetings in the White House between the principals group, people like Condoleezza Rice, John Ashcroft, Donald Rumsfeld. These are important documents. I mean, the photographs are important because they show viscerally what happened. But the memos show who ordered what happened to happen.
Talk about Abu Malik Kanami.
There's one detainee in Iraq who is an older gentleman who was interrogated using the stress techniques that have become all too common in military prisons at the time, forced exercises, running around, holding your arms out. Try it sometimes to hold your arms out for as long as you can. You can't do it for more than a few minutes. These are the kinds of things Iraqi detainees were routinely asked to do. He was 44 years old. He was put down to lay down in his cell after this strenuous exercise. Next morning, he was found dead. This is but one example of the way in which torture can lead to death. People have also been beaten so severely that they develop blood clots that go to their lungs or their head and kill them. I mean, there are various ways you can be tortured to death.
Mohammed Sayari.
Sayari, we don't know. I mean, it looks as though he was interrogated. He was an Afghan detainee who was picked up by some special forces troops in Afghanistan, and he was shot and killed by them at a later point. It's not clear whether they simply executed him or whether they interrogated him and shot him. But that's yet another homicide. There are people who have froze to death, people who have been beaten to death.
Manadel al-Jamadi.
This is a CIA detainee who was literally hung to death. I mean, he suffocated because his arms were behind him, handcuffed behind him, and held up to the point where he appears to have suffocated to death. The CIA was implicated in that, and that's an interesting death because that was a case where the CIA Inspector General referred the case to the Department of Justice for prosecution, possible prosecution, and yet the Department of Justice never took any action. The name of the CIA interrogator in that case is actually publicly known, Mark Swanner.
Who is he?
He's a CIA officer, and he's, for all I know, still walking around in the United States, even though he is implicated in this homicide. Hassan
Ghul.
Hassan Ghul, we don't know whether he's dead or not. He's a Pakistani man who was arrested in northern Iraq. It's thought to be a link between al-Qaeda and the Iraqi base, Jordanian Zarqawi, who was killed by the CIA later, or by the military later. He was in the CIA high-value detainee program for quite some time. His name is redacted from the memos. You can tell it's him from the descriptions and because they made one mistake in the redaction where you can see his name. He's now disappeared. We don't know where he is. He's not at Guantanamo. There's no confirmation he's in Pakistan. In the CIA memos that were released last month, there's discussion of how sick he is. We think that he may have been tortured to death.